Gurdjieff had a theory of man as basically having a number of centres. And very basically, we can say there are three centres: the physical, the emotional, and the intellectual centre. And he said, in normal unconscious man, these centres are dysfunctional. They almost do each other's jobs. And so one of his aims in creating the movements was to bring these centres into balance, into alignment. And we can see this very clearly as people set about learning movements. What often happens is that rather than using a combination of, let's say, the physical and the intellectual centre in order to learn the movements and the sequences, people, rather than that, get taken over by their emotions. The emotional centre takes over. The emotional centre dominates. Now, just as in life, we know if we get overwhelmed by our emotions, it's very difficult to actually do anything. So in the movements. But we encourage people to, rather than get stuck or overwhelmed by their emotions, during the movements class, during the movements workshop, we try and encourage people to work rather through a combination of the physical and the intellectual centre, which kind of, as it were, bypasses the emotions. Now, if we can learn how to do that in a movements class, that is, okay, we see the emotions coming up, the anxiety coming up, I don't know what to do, I'm not sure what to do. But if we can learn to manage that through keeping going on with the movement, through keeping counting is always useful. If we can manage that, that gives us a great tool for everyday life. Because as we all know, in everyday life too, often situations are such that we get overwhelmed by our emotions. If I can learn to manage that during a class, during a workshop, I have a good tool. It's not that I'm suggesting that in everyday life we start counting or doing movements when we get stressed, when we get overtaken by the emotions. But in the class we learn the mechanism of what happens and how to deal with it. And if I can deal with it in the class, I have the mechanism of how I can deal with that in everyday life. And that is one of the greatest, I think, life tools which we can get from learning movements.